Climbing is dangerous. Climbing is inherently dangerous.
I kind of slipped on this kind of wet slab. My right ankle just totally exploded.
But then when I was on the rock, I started to get a bit feeling the closest to coming in and out of low consciousness, not really fully on the verge of passing out, but definitely not right.
Rock climbing is a dangerous sport, but it's a great way to escape the mundane by solving riddles and achieving goals that climbers never thought were possible.
When I'm climbing, when I'm on the wall, I can't think about anything else besides being focused on the task that I'm doing. And I think that just seems to drown out everything else that's going on in my life.
I've been climbing 22 years, and it's such a natural thing that just keep my emotions sort of low. I just think of unstressful stuff. I don't feel like I have to be okay, next move, right hand there, and then I gotta put my protection there. It's just this natural thing I don't really have to think about.
There are many styles and levels of rock climbing, ranging from beginner, intermediate, advanced, and professional. Climbing, although a blanket term, does not consist of only one type of climb method. Knowing the differences in the types of climbs can make the difference on what personal and professional achievements climbers can obtain.
It's like one sport, but there's a lot of different categories. And you have gym climbing, you have outside climbing where you're sport climbing, there's bouldering, there's trad climbing, there's big wall climbing, there's aid climbing.
My favorite would be sport climbing. Sport climbing is when you're climbing on a rope, on a harness, so you're always attached and tied into something. And there's a person at the bottom who is belaying you. Versus bouldering is you're climbing, let's say 10 or 12 feet off the ground, and you're falling onto a crash pad.
My favorite type of climbing would have to be long, all-day climbs. It's stuff that kind of requires both physical ability and mental abilities, everything in your body. Long, big wall routes. Essentially trad climbing, climbing up cracks, kind of have to be prepared in a lot of different areas.
The three main disciplines to rock climbing that I perform or that I really enjoy is the traditional rock climbing. That's when you placing gear as you go up. Bouldering and sport. And I like them all.
Climbers can't climb with just their own hands and feet. Tools are needed to help them conquer their goals and obstacles.
All you need is a pair of shoes, a chalk bag, and a harness, so that will cost you about $150. Once you start going outside, though, you may want to consider getting a crash pad, which will run between $100 and $200, and possibly an outdoor rope. It's approximately the same cost, $150 or so.
It's not that heavy, and I think I try to strategize a lot before going up on climbs and just only taking the bare essentials. Maybe back in the day when I was kind of first learning, I would just be taking way too much stuff. And I'd be like, oh, I'm not climbing well today. And looking back on it, it's well, because you had 50 pounds of gear hanging off your harness, of course you're not climbing well. You weighed 200 pounds up there. But nowadays, I can climb El Cap with 4 cams. It's just kind of all about strategizing and just taking my gear.
It's very important. I have a couple of stories in which I assumed everything was in the car, get to the place and not have a rope, or get to the place and not have the proper gear. So it complicates things, and if you want to achieve your goal, you actually have to plan as well and plan accordingly.
You definitely want to learn to tie your knots, check all of your safety equipment, a bunch of times before you go outside, and go with people who really know what they're talking about and what they're doing.
Climbers must always train to prepare their bodies to conquer the next difficult climb.
Well, I'd say just like anything, it's practice and doing it over and over again, consistently. So I would encourage new climbers to start, when they start climbing, to come 2 to 3 days a week.
I've been getting older, and I feel like I need to kind of start training more to continue improving as a climber. Once I start kind of burning out on camping and climbing outside all the time, I'll settle down somewhere, focus on climbing in the gym, start training, build that strength back up, and then hit the road again. If you want to improve, you got to be doing climbs that are kind of out of your reach. You got to be trying hard. You got to be falling on the ropes. You can't just be walking up climbs every time. If it's not hard, you're not improving.
Yeah, that's the difficulty rating scale. I think it's named after an old guy named John Vermin Sherman. So they call it the V scale. The V comes from the vermin in his name. So it starts at 0 and goes all the way up to, I think, V17 is the hardest climb that anyone's ever climbed. Just got done climbing the Hunk, which is a highball V2. Highball is anything over like 20 feet without a rope. So I think the Hunk is like 25 feet at the top. And yeah, still trying to calm down. That was really, really exciting, really scary.
Many climbers have to overcome the fear of heights, falling, or failure of achieving a goal.
I climb because I'm terrified of heights, and it's a way that I can expose myself to being really high up in a controlled way.
You probably saw my legs shaking and stuff, which is like an involuntary reaction of just tension in the body and, fear. So when I finally got my hands on like the first good hold of the route, I just tried to relax my body and just breathe deep breaths and just calm down. So like I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I'm climbing like V6, V7 now, so V2 should be manageable for me. And I knew if I just keep a level head and relax like I tried to do for a couple minutes in the middle, that I would be fine.
And so I had to like build a temporary anchor and tell my friend that I was just not feeling right. I had to sort of compose myself after he just set an anchor himself and lowered to me 20, 30 feet below, totally assessed that we should bail. So it was only scary because the easiest thing sometimes when you're doing multi-pitch is actually to continue going up. But now when you're experiencing altitude sickness.
There's one time I got kind of lost on the route. I was super run out, and I actually started crying. I was so terrified. And in the last 10 years, it's kind of become less of a thing. When you get scared, you're in a dangerous situation, and your physical and mental ability is impaired because you're freaked out. That's serious, and that's how you can get hurt.
So if you're scared of heights, I think actually the best place to start would be to climb on ropes, top rope climbing, because one of the things you'll do very early on in the first class is to learn to trust the rope. Lean back and sit into the rope to see how that feels like. And once you've done that a couple of times, that's kind of how you conquer your fear of heights.
Climbing is an incredibly dangerous sport, which piques the question, why do it at all?
My end goal is actually just to curb my fear more and more to the point that I'm no longer afraid. And I'd like to be able to do a bunch of different hikes that are definitely elevated. Specifically, Zion National Park has a hike called Angel's Landing. And it is such a beautiful view once you get to the top, and I know that it's there, and I can almost taste it, but I just need a little bit more help from climbing before I can get there.
So I just slapped my palm on the top, but I was happy to be done with the climb when I pulled up over the lip. Super fun.
We were all rock climbers, and we were really passionate about rock climbing, and we just saw this business opportunity. We ran the numbers, we looked at it and thought, you know what, this might work. And at the time, we all had full-time jobs. I was working in the toy industry. I was doing that for about 12 years. And my husband, Wes, he was a lawyer. And my business partner, Wes, he worked at a hedge fund in New York City. So we all were just on this path. We were professionals. It was nothing to do with climbing. But as we started getting more into this business, we realized, wow, you know what? We're really passionate about this thing, and eventually we might be able to quit our jobs and do this full time.
I'd been living on the road for the last 10 years, just climbing. At a certain point, I was just working these odd jobs, just a few months of the year, just to make enough money to kind of get by so I could just kind of pursue the life passion of just climbing all the time. In the last 2 years, I've been able to pick up sponsorships that have fully supported me, so now I'm able to climb year-round and just kind of be financially supported by that.
The first time I ever just slept under the stars in a sleeping bag on a desert floor. Fell in love with everything from putting your climbing shoes on and clipping things on and off of your harness and getting to the top, getting a vantage point that you otherwise wouldn't get. And that's what I really fell in love with, just standing in places that without that knowledge of rock climbing, you wouldn't get that experience.
The sport of rock climbing is attracting new people every day. This has created a community of climbers who support each other on climbs and ascents.
When you're sitting bouldering, because you can't be climbing the whole time because it's pretty hard on your body, so there's a lot of hanging out, and that's what really creates the community part.
There was a certain point where I knew Jim was thinking about it too, and I knew that he knew I was thinking about it, but we weren't really talking about it. Fall season of 2017 was like the season where we're like, all right, we're going for this. This is gonna happen. We're gonna put forth all their effort into trying to beat this time. Tom's Flooring too was like giving us all this information on his strategies on how to like improve times, because you know he's been kind of the king of the speed record for the last 15 years. We got halfway, I checked our time, and it was like we were on track to beat the record, and I screamed up to Jim, I'm like, dude, we're doing this, you know, 100%, and you know, we just, yeah, it was great. We had all these friends in the meadow screaming at us, and they were cheering us on, and by the end it was like this big deal. And
the climbing community, it's a beautiful community that revolves around climbing, and it's a beautiful thing, especially with LA just having so many new climbing gyms. To go to a climbing place like Malibu Creek where we are now and go back to the gym and you see those faces that are out there grunting and fighting and sweating and losing their skin on these beautiful lines. Then go to the gym and you see them working on projects only to better themselves, to come back out and do it. I think it's a beautiful thing to just run into these people that are always helpful, always looking forward to the next project, and even looking forward to just climbing with new and different people. I realize now that there was a period of time in which I was completely comfortable with never climbing again, which I'm happy that with, again, the climbing community and my friends just brought me back to climbing and took me out, just fell in love with it again. Haven't stopped since.
Climbing is no longer just an underground sport. It is growing in popularity and will be joining the Olympics in 2020.
Climbing is going to be in the Olympics for the first time in 2020 in Tokyo, and it's going to be coming to LA in 2028. So we're really excited on how that's going to change the future of climbing. For the Olympics, you're competing in 3 disciplines: sport climbing, so I talked about climbing on ropes, bouldering, which is climbing, you know, on the shorter walls, and speed climbing, which is a timed, it's the same exact holds, 2 people racing to the top. And we have all 3 of those here at Center One. We built this facility in mind for an Olympic training center.
that's super cool. You know, it's kind of becoming more of a mainstream sport, and I think the Olympics is really gonna help push it into that spotlight. So I never thought I'd see the day.
You won't be good the very first time, but that's exactly what rock climbing is. Because once you achieve that goal that you weren't able to get the very first time, and you'll get the 2, 3, 4 times or weeks later, you're only gonna find another project and another challenge. And it's been my quest for the past 15 years of trying to get to the new challenge.